English camp. I'm your counselor, Mrs. Francine Flum. I'm here to make sure you don't fail English again.
I'm so happy to be here, deep in education.
I have better things to do.
Alright, let's start off with your names.
Well, I'm Lila Lee, but you call me Lila or Lee, whichever y'all prefer.
I'm Ashley. You didn't know my last name.
Well, let's start off with reading the short story Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe.
Alright.
Hey. Let's sit down. Lila, why don't you read first?
True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous. I have been and I am. While you say that I'm mad.
Hold your horses, Lou. I can't even understand you. You're reading way too fast.
One fix-up strategy is to adjust your reading rate so you can understand the text better.
Oh, thanks for the tip, Mrs. Flum. I'll slow down like a tractor with a flat tire on my grandpapa's farm.
Villains! I shriek. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart.
What in the world does dissemble mean?
Well, if you look at the sentence, you can think of a word that will fit in this place. That's what context clues are. That's another fix-up strategy.
Related story. It reminds me of the time my grandpapa...
Lou, stop. We don't have time for your hillbilly stories. It's time for literary elements. What would the conflict of the story be? The conflict is obviously external, and it could be person versus nature, or person versus society.
The conflict would be person versus person because the narrator is frightened of the old man's eye. This reminds him of a vulture's eye, duh.
Correct. Now, let's talk about point of view. There are 4 types. First person, second person, third person limited, or third person omniscient. You can tell the story is in first person because they use the words I and me, and the narrator is in the story.
I think I'm starting to get this.
Let's move on to protagonist and antagonist. The protagonist is the main character who is faced with problems. The antagonist is the problem or character that the protagonist faces. Lila, who do you think the protagonist and antagonist are?
Well, I have to say that the protagonist would be the narrator because she's haunted by the old man's eye, and her mind tricks her into hearing the old man's heart beating, and then confesses her crime. Antagonist would be the old man's eye because it frightens the narrator. It is the cause of the death of the old man.
You are a star.
Oh, thank you.
Now, time for the theme. The theme is a one-word general statement about life. What do you think the theme is, Ashley?
Guilt, because when the narrator heard the heart beating, she went insane and flooded with guilt, confesses his or her crime.
You girls make me so proud. Alright, kiddos, time for the plot diagram.
Oh, look at there.
Can I see that? Alright.
Yeah. Okay.
First, we begin with the exposition. The exposition is from the very beginning of the story and includes the inciting incident, introduces the characters, and the setting. What do you think they are?
Well, I believe it would go a little something like this. In the story Telltale Heart, the narrator informs the readers about his or her disease of hearing things, and the reader later finds out it takes place at the old man's house.
Very good. Okay.
Liked it.
And grass over. Next is the rising action. Usually there are 3. Ashley, what do you think they are?
Well, the first one would be when the narrator realizes that she's really freaked out from the old man's eye and thinks that the only solution is to kill him. The second rising action would be that for 7 nights, the narrator sneaked in the old man's house at exactly midnight to watch him while he slept. The third rising action is that on the 8th night, her thumb slipped, which caused the old man to wake with a fright. She stayed still for a whole hour since the old man was sitting on in bed listening. She decided it was time to kill him.
Well done! Next is the plot line. Next in the plot line would be the climax. Lila, explain to me what the climax would be and why.
The climax would be when the narrator suffocates the old man by putting the heavy bed over him so that she doesn't have to see terrible eye ever again. This would be the climax because it is the solution to the conflict.
You are on a roll. The following actions are next. There are 2, so Ashley, go ahead.
The first falling action is when the narrator hides a dead body underneath the floorboard so that nobody would ever detect anything wrong. The second following action is when the neighbor called the police because they heard a shriek and suspected something. The police investigated the house and the narrator convinced the police that nothing had ever happened.
Yes, indeed. The last part of the plot line is the resolution, which is how the story ends. Lou, be a dear and tell me the resolution.
The resolution is when the narrator hears the old man's heart beating beneath the floor and confesses her crime to the police.
One last thing, girls. Think of a character, a trait they have, and find a passage or a sentence that proves it.
Oh, I found it. The narrator was frightened. On page 625 of the textbook you copied the story from, it says, "It is impossible to say how first idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night."
And then you would cite it using the author's last name and page number. For example, in parentheses, you would have Poe and then the page number, which is 625. Oh, you girls make me so happy. I just want to take you home and raise you like a mother raises her wolf pups. Welcome to English Camp. I am Mrs. Welcome to English Camp.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2.
I'm so happy to see you girls here. Let's wait. Oh my god! Oh, you're like
It's like, wait.
innocent flum. I'm here to make sure.
Because when the narrator heard the heart beating, he shrieked. I found it. The narrator was frightened on page 625 of the textbook.
What would the conflict be if, what would the story of the conflict be?
And the second rising action would be that for 7 nights, the narrator sneaks in the open zone.
In first person.
Natalie!
What are we going to